It is just, it's wild to think about a couple sitting across from each other at a diner, just like picking up their food in total silence.
Right. And not the comfortable kind of silence either.
Exactly. Not the peaceful kind, the kind where the air just feels, impossibly heavy.
Because they have just entirely run out of words. And statistically, for married couples, that state of almost total speechlessness hits right around the 8-year mark.
Wow. I mean, that is a sobering reality, but it's not just marriages, right?
Oh, no. At work, up to 80% of all the problems we face. So missed deadlines, office drama, blown deals, they boil down to one single thing, which is a breakdown in communication.
And so if you are listening to this deep dive today, you are probably looking to unpack the hidden mechanics of how we connect, to rescue yourself from those exact statistics. We're diving into the book, Am I Making Myself Clear by Terry Felber, because right now our ability to actually transfer our intent to another human being just seems broken.
It is. It's breaking down because we are confusing connectivity with true connection. I mean, we live in an era of instant emails and, constant video chats, but we treat communication like a megaphone.
Like we're just broadcasting.
Exactly. We assume it's just about broadcasting a message into the void and expecting it to be understood.
When in reality, it's a dance. I mean, it's a constant two-way dynamic of reading your partner, shifting your weight, moving together in real time.
And to master that dynamic, you really have to look at the entire trajectory of an interaction. We have to decode the unspoken signals we constantly broadcast, and then how we filter incoming information, how we construct our phrasing.
Right, all the way down to the internal monologue that dictates it all.
Precisely.
And the craziest part is that we have to start before a single word is even spoken, because according to the source, up to 90% of our communication is nonverbal.
90%.
Yeah, and the consequences of getting that 90% wrong are, well, they can be pretty extreme.
Oh, definitely.
There is this deeply unfortunate story in the book that illustrates this perfectly about a couple on holiday in the Far East.
Right. This is a classic failure of assuming your intent translates across contexts.
Right. So they were at a restaurant with their pet poodle, and they didn't speak the local language, so they tried to rely entirely on hand gestures to order food specifically for the poodle.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
It was. They point at the dog, point at their mouths, and make, eating motions. The waiter nods, smiles, picks up the poodle, and just walks back into the kitchen.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And half an hour later, the waiter returns and serves them the roasted poodle on a silver platter.
It is an awful outcome, obviously.
Yeah.
But it highlights something so fundamental. Gestures and expressions are not universally objective.
Right.
You're always communicating, even when you aren't talking, and people are always interpreting. And the most powerful tool we have to shape that interpretation is literally right on our face.
The smile.
Yeah, the smile. It is actually mechanically easier to smile than to frown. Yeah, it takes 62 muscles to frown, but only 26 to smile. Yet, we drastically underestimate its psychological value. A smile signals biological safety.
Right. It disarms the defense mechanisms of the person looking at you.
Exactly.
And Holiday Inn actually built a massive hiring strategy around that exact mechanism. The author notes that when they were hiring for 500 positions, they interviewed 5,000 candidates.
That's a lot of interviews.
It is. And they outright rejected anyone who smiled fewer than 4 times during the interview. 4 smiles was the absolute baseline just to be considered hireable.
Well, because a smile communicates approval, innocence, openness, which, are non-negotiable for hospitality.
Sure.
But that nonverbal baseline extends to our entire physical presence, including our wardrobe. What we wear sends a very loud, invisible message about how we view the environment and the people in it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at historical shifts in the Oval Office regarding this, just reporting on what the book points out. Yep. During his presidency, Bill Clinton favored a more casual approach. He frequently worked in the Oval Office wearing a sweatsuit. But then when George W. Bush took office, he mandated a strict suit coat policy for the space. And according to the records in the book, productivity actually increased significantly as a result of that more formal attire.
Because it shifts the psychological environment,
Yeah.
right? Dressing well and presenting a formal demeanor, it isn't about vanity or suppressing your personality.
Right.
It's about establishing mutual respect. When you dress up for a meeting, you are communicating non-verbally that you hold the other person in high esteem.
Overdressing is almost always better than underdressing.
Always. because it proves that you value the interaction enough to put in the effort.
Okay, but let me push back on this a bit. What about the physical elements we literally cannot change? I mean, if so much hinges on visual perception, how do you handle limitations?
Well, you have to accept what you can't change and just own it entirely. When you hide a limitation, you project insecurity,
Yeah.
and that makes the other person uncomfortable. But when you own it, you remove the friction entirely.
That makes sense.
Think about Beethoven. He became profoundly deaf at 46, yet composed his greatest music afterward. Franklin D. Roosevelt was paralyzed by polio at 39 and was elected president 4 times.
John Milton was blind, right?
Right. Douglas Bader had no legs and was a fighter ace. And even Clint Eastwood, he was told early on by a studio executive that he talked too slow, had a chipped tooth, and his Adam's apple stuck out too far.
And he became an icon.
Exactly. They succeeded because they stopped apologizing for their physical reality.
Right. If you are comfortable in your own skin, the person across from you can just relax.
Exactly.
And so once that nonverbal foundation is set, you have to actually prove to the other person that they matter to you.
Which is incredibly difficult, honestly, because it requires overriding our own biology.
What do you mean?
Well, human beings are hardwired for self-preservation, which makes us inherently self-focused. Like when someone hands you a group photo that you're in, whose face do you instinctively look for first?
Mine, without question. I'm checking to see if I blinked.
Right. We all do. We evaluate reality based on how it impacts us first. So effective communication requires a conscious, active effort to put the other person in the center of the frame instead of yourself.
Like Cecil Rhodes, the founder of the Rhodes Scholarship, the book tells this great story about a highly formal dinner he was hosting.
Oh, this is a great example.
Yeah, everyone was in black tie evening wear, and this young man arrives late, straight from a delayed train, wearing these shabby, travel-stained clothes. The kid is completely mortified.
Of course.
So Rhodes sees this happening, slips away, and secretly changes out of his formal tuxedo into an old, shabby blue suit.
Wow. By deliberately downgrading his own status, he protected his guests' dignity.
That is empathy in action. It's about absorbing someone else's discomfort.
Exactly. And Ronald Reagan used that same mechanism on a much larger scale. He and his cabinet, which included General Colin Powell, had crafted a policy that ended up failing.
Okay.
When the press started circling and asked Reagan if the failure was his idea or if someone else messed up, Reagan immediately took full public blame. He shielded Powell and the cabinet completely.
And the result of absorbing that blow was lifelong loyalty.
Right. He demonstrated that he valued his team more than his own immediate public image.
But proving someone matters isn't just about these grand protective gestures, right? On a daily basis, it mostly comes down to just the mechanics of listening.
Which is something we routinely fake.
Oh, absolutely. FDR ran a brilliant experiment on this. He got so tired of the hollow, nodding smiles in the White House receiving lines that he decided to test if anyone was actually processing his words.
I love this story.
So to everyone who shook his hand, he murmured with a pleasant smile, "I murdered my grandmother this morning."
And because people were only responding to his tone and his smile, they replied with things like, "Keep up the good work, Mr. President."
Exactly. Until the Bolivian ambassador came through, he actually processed the words, leaned in, and whispered, "I'm sure she had it coming."
It perfectly captures the illusion of listening. We mimic the physical act of paying attention while our minds are completely elsewhere.
So how do we fix that?
To dismantle that illusion, you have to use a specific framework. Pause.
Wow.
Look, listen, respond.
See, I struggle with the listen part of that because of how our brains operate. The math in the book shows we think 4 times faster than we speak or listen.
Right.
So if my brain has all this excess processing power, I find myself running background apps like planning my grocery list or analyzing an email while my spouse is talking to me. How do you stop that internal static?
Well, you have to reframe your understanding of what listening actually is. It is not a passive state of silence where you just wait for data to wash over you. It requires the active management of your attention. Think of it like tuning a radio. If you try to listen to your partner while reviewing a report in your head, you get 2 overlapping frequencies. You just get static.
Right.
You have to actively choose to power down the other stations. Pause your physical movement. Look them in the eye to anchor your focus.
Yeah.
Listen for the intent beneath the words, and only then respond.
So you stabilize the connection before you transmit.
Yes.
And when it is time to transmit, the precision of the words you select changes the entire reality of the conversation.
Because words are not just definitions, they are emotional anchors.
FDR knew this, right? When he was drafting his Pearl Harbor speech, He originally wrote, "A day that will live in world history." But at the last second, he crossed out world history and wrote, "infamy."
A day that will live in infamy.
Yeah.
By changing one word, he shifted the phrasing from just a neutral historical observation to a deeply emotional rallying cry. Winston Churchill did something similar when he was sitting on a train trying to conceptualize the growing divide with the Soviets. He looked at a literal curtain in his compartment and coined the term Iron Curtain.
Wow.
He gave the world a visceral, immovable image.
And when you ignore the context of the words you choose, it blows up in your face.
Oh, completely.
Like, General Motors tried to sell the Chevy Nova in Latin America, completely missing that in Spanish. Nova translates to doesn't go.
A terrible name for a car. And then Coors Beer translated their slogan, "Turn it loose," into Spanish, where it colloquially translated to "suffer from diarrhea."
Oh, man. And Braniff Airlines tried to promote their leather seats with the phrase "fly in leather," which landed in the market as "fly naked."
It's hilarious, but it proves that you have to speak the other person's language, both literally and emotionally.
Right, and to do that effectively without losing your own voice, you have to navigate the assertiveness spectrum.
Yes, this is crucial.
Let's look at a high-stakes scenario. Say a vendor suddenly raises their prices on you in a boardroom. If you operate from a passive mindset, you just accept the hike, absorb the cost, and build resentment.
Because a passive approach prioritizes avoiding immediate conflict over finding a sustainable solution.
Right, but if you swing to the aggressive side, you slam your fist on the table, accuse them of trying to gouge you, and threaten to terminate the contract.
Which just forces the other party into a defensive posture. Aggression attacks motives and character.
So what's the middle ground?
Assertiveness. Assertiveness addresses specific observable behaviors. Instead of accusing them of greed, an assertive response would be, "This 15% increase exceeds the parameters we agreed upon last quarter. Help me understand what changed in your supply chain."
Ah, so you are holding the boundary firmly but maintaining respect.
Exactly.
And maintaining that objective middle ground is critical because our subjective interpretations are so often flawed. There is that great story about the two taxidermists critiquing a stuffed owl in a shop window. They are mercilessly tearing it apart, complaining that the wings are disproportionate, the feathers are arranged wrong, the posture is entirely unnatural.
And then the live owl turns its head and winks at them.
It's such a humbling reminder that absolute certainty doesn't equal accuracy.
But staying assertive and objective is incredibly difficult when the person across from you refuses to play by those rules.
Yeah, this is where things get really complicated. What happens when you are trying to be objective, but the other person starts actively manipulating the conversation?
Like they start playing games.
Right. Say, for example, they deploy the anger game. They just explode. When that happens, my brain instantly enters a threat state, and my first instinct is just to placate them so they calm down.
And that is an intentional amygdala hijack. By using explosive emotion, they are attempting to create an environment where everyone walks on eggshells. They are effectively taking the conversation hostage.
So how do you disarm that?
The mechanism to disarm the anger game is to refuse to absorb their emotional energy. You don't match their volume and you don't validate the outburst. You firmly redirect to the behavior something like, "We can continue this discussion when we can both speak at a normal volume."
Okay, what about the God card game? I've seen people do this where they claim, like, absolute divine or unquestionable authority for a personal preference just to shut down a debate.
Right, it's an escalation tactic. It's designed to make you feel like questioning them is equivalent to questioning an absolute moral truth.
And there's the crying game, too.
Yes, where tears are weaponized not out of genuine grief, but to instantly halt a valid critique.
So what's the countermeasure?
Relentless authenticity. You acknowledge the emotion without conceding the objective truth of the situation.
But here's the catch. Even if you use the right words, maintain your boundaries, and refuse to play games, people are still going to clash with you. Friction is inevitable. So how do we weather that?
Well, the ultimate preventative medicine for conflict is a surplus of encouragement. And right now, we are operating in a massive praise deficit.
Yeah, the stats on this are shocking. Studies show that mothers criticize their children 90% of the time, and teachers deliver negative feedback 75% of the time. We are conditioned to only speak up when something is wrong.
And the emotional mathematics of that are brutal. It takes 4 positive statements just to offset the psychological damage of 1 negative statement.
4 to 1.
Yes. People are absolutely starved for recognition. Thomas J. Watson Sr., the founder of IBM, he recognized this deficit early on. He used to walk around the office and write small checks, like $5 or $10, handing them to employees. He caught doing something right.
But the employees didn't even cash the checks, did they?
No, they framed them.
Uh-huh.
The public recognition was worth far more to them than the actual currency.
Because it validates their effort. The book mentions a story of a man who gave a stray dog a treat for bringing him his morning newspaper. The next morning, the man opens his door, and the dog is sitting there with 8 different neighbors' newspapers.
Right. Human psychology operates on a similar reward loop. We will go to extraordinary lengths to repeat behaviors that earn us genuine praise.
But there has to be a line between praise and empty flattery, right? Like, if I am just constantly validating everyone around me, doesn't it water down the impact? Do people start thinking I'm being fake?
That's a great distinction. Flattery is generalized and often manipulative. It's just designed to make someone like you.
Okay.
Focused praise, however, targets a specific observable behavior. You aren't just saying you're a great employee. You're saying the way you de-escalated that frustrated client on yesterday's call saved the account.
Ah, got it.
That specificity deposits real equity into what we can call an emotional bank account.
Yeah.
You need a massive surplus in that account so that when you inevitably have to make a withdrawal, like a critique or a conflict, the relationship doesn't go bankrupt.
Right. And when that conflict does happen, our default settings are usually destructive. We lean into avoidance, the silent treatment, or extreme power plays.
Oh, definitely.
There's a wild example in the sources of a man who got so furious during an argument with his wife that he went out to the garage and completely removed the engine battery from her car so she couldn't leave.
Right. His mindset was, if I can't win the intellectual argument, I will control your physical movement.
Wow.
It is the ultimate toxic power play, and it destroys trust instantaneously.
So to avoid those meltdowns, we need behavioral overrides, like the rule to never discuss a serious conflict over the phone.
Precisely. Because over the phone, you lose that crucial 90% of nonverbal context we talked about earlier.
You're trying to defuse a bomb blindfolded.
Exactly. Another essential rule is to depersonalize the issue. You attack the problem sitting on the table between you. You don't attack the person sitting across from you.
And perhaps the most practical rule, never argue when you are tired. I mean, why does a minor disagreement at 1:00 a.m. suddenly feel like the end of the relationship?
Because your biological resources are depleted. Your prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and emotional regulation, is essentially powered down for the night.
Right.
You're trying to resolve a complex interpersonal dispute using only the primitive reactive parts of your brain. You just lose all perspective. You have to table the discussion until your biological hardware reboots.
That perfectly sets up the final piece of this puzzle. We've explored how to interact with the external world, but the person you communicate with the most every single day is yourself.
And if your internal communication is fundamentally flawed, your external communication will inevitably break down. This brings us to NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming.
Which sounds incredibly technical. How does that actually work in practice?
Let's break down the term. Neuro refers to how your brain processes the world through your senses. Linguistic is the language you use to describe that experience to yourself and others.
Okay.
And programming means that the language you choose directly codes how your brain feels about reality. It explores how we can subtly match someone's body language or speaking pace so their brain unconsciously feels a sense of deep rapport.
It also highlights that we don't all process reality the same way. The sources explain this through representational systems using a family walking on the beach.
Right.
The husband is a visual person. His brain encodes the glistening water and the glowing sunset.
While the wife is kinesthetic. Her brain encodes the physical feeling of the warm sand and the embrace of her son.
And the son is auditory. He encodes the sound of crashing waves and seagulls.
They all experience the exact same objective event, but recorded it in 3 completely different internal languages. If you want to truly connect with someone, you have to listen for their primary system.
So you say, I hear what you're saying to the auditory person, and I see your point to the visual person.
Exactly. But the most crucial application of this is your own self-talk. The subconscious mind accepts whatever the conscious mind feeds it, and crucially, the human mind cannot hold 2 conflicting thoughts at exactly the same time.
Which is a profound structural advantage if you use it correctly.
Yes.
The source provides this airplane turbulence analogy. When you are looking out of an airplane window during severe turbulence, you see the steel wings bending up and down. The immediate reactive thought is steel shouldn't bend, the wing is going to snap. Panic just floods your system.
And you can't just yell at yourself to stop being scared. The fear is already there.
Right. You have to actively overwrite the thought with a stronger logic. You consciously tell yourself, airplanes are engineered to flex. That bending is exactly what absorbs the force and keeps the wing from snapping. I am mathematically safer right now than I am in my car.
Exactly. Because your mind can't hold the panic thought and the logic thought simultaneously. The logic actively displaces the fear.
That's amazing.
Yet so many people refuse to utilize that override. They fall into what the book describes as the Snoopy trap.
Like the comic strip.
Yeah, exactly like the comic strip, where Snoopy sits on his doghouse lamenting, "Yesterday I was a dog, today I'm a dog, tomorrow I'll probably still be a dog."
Wow.
It's surrendering to a negative loop and acting as if your internal state is out of your control.
But let me challenge that for a second. Isn't it exhausting to have to constantly police our own thoughts? I mean, if someone cuts me off in traffic, sometimes I don't want to use logic. I just want to enjoy the adrenaline of being furious for a minute.
And it is entirely valid to experience that initial biological flash of emotion. But you are highlighting the exact difference between reactive and proactive living.
Oh, so?
Well, an animal merely reacts to external stimuli. A dog sees a threat, it barks. As humans, we possess the unique cognitive ability to observe our own thoughts. We can step into the gap between stimulus and response.
So we can step outside ourselves and say, wow, I am actively choosing to let this minor traffic incident dictate my mood for the next hour.
Exactly. Be happy is not a passive result of perfect external circumstances. It is a proactive decision.
Yeah.
You have to take strict responsibility for the thoughts you allow to take root in your mind.
You know, when you look back at the mechanics we've unpacked today, it really is a complete system.
There way is.
We've decoded the 90% of communication that is invisible, the smiles, the attire, the physical presence. We looked at the empathy of Cecil Rhodes and that active listening formula to pause, look, listen, and respond.
Yeah.
We learned how word choice shifts reality, how to stay in that assertive middle lane, and how to disarm manipulation. We explored the 4-to-1 ratio of the emotional bank account to weather conflict, and finally, how to use our self-talk to overwrite panic with logic.
And if you are listening right now, the vital takeaway is that communication is not just some soft corporate buzzword. It is the core operating system of your life.
Right.
Whether you are trying to secure a promotion, repair a fractured marriage, or simply experience the profound relief of feeling accurately understood by another person.
It is the mechanism that builds the bridge.
I want to leave you with a profound historical moment drawn from the epilogue of the text. During the absolute depths of the Great Depression, the author Dale Carnegie rented a hotel room in New York City to teach a class on human communication.
Okay.
Given the absolute economic devastation of the time, he expected a very modest turnout.
I mean, people were literally standing in bread lines just to survive the week.
Right. But instead of a few dozen people, 2,500 desperate individuals packed that hotel room to overflowing.
No way.
Yeah. Why would people who can barely afford to eat crowd into a room to learn how to talk to each other? Because they instinctively understood something we often forget. In times of total crisis, when the money vanishes, the systems fail, and external resources dry up, the only true survival skill you have left is your ability to connect with another human being. Your words are your ultimate currency. So how are you spending them today?
Are you spending them building those bridges, or are you sitting across the diner table in a heavy, unbroken silence? Try utilizing the pause, look, listen, respond framework in your very next conversation. Jump back into the dance. We'll see you next time.